Hello and welcome to the CHEERS Registry training series. In this video, we will be demonstrating the sample group workflow. So after logging in, you'll want to click on the sample group tab, and that will take you to our sample group summary page. Now, like with our sites tab, we include all different types of sample groups. So you'll have alterations, residential new construction, solar, non-residential, 2013, 2016, everything's located in one place. So we've offered a very powerful and smart search tool to help you manage those different types of groups in their single location. So we have a filter here to the left. You can filter by the different types of groups. You can also apply a community level filter. So if you're working within a community, it will only show those sample groups that are associated with that community. Another option that you have is our search tool. So for example, you want to see only the solar sample groups that you are a part of. So if I type in the keyword for solar, you can see right here, this is our solar sample group name, and so if you type that in there, it's going to limit it to just those solar sample groups, showing you the most recently accessed sample group at the top of the list. The other things that you can do is you can search by the sites that are part of that group. So for example, if I wanted to see groups that this site belongs to, I can type in that address. So I'm just going to type in S009 and hit enter, and it's going to show me those groups that have a site with that designation in it. So we've got two groups here. They're likely just, you can see this one has a similar name to it, but it's likely a different type of group. And so they'll show up, but it narrows it down to allow you to choose from just those that you are searching for. So we're going to go ahead and go back to all of our groups, and now we're going to talk about how do I create my sample groups and what does that entire process look like. So over here to the right, we have our create new sample group button, and like our other buttons, this one remembers what you last selected. So if you're just creating several sample groups of the same type, you just click on the button. If you need to select a different type of sample group, you can use the down arrow and it will give you the list of different type of groups that we have. So you can select from residential alterations, residential new construction open sample groups, residential new construction closed sample groups, solar version 10, solar version 9, non-residential new construction, and non-residential alterations. Now from this point forward, all of the functionality is the same. We just use these selections to filter out the sites that you can choose from and to apply the correct rules for that type of sample group. So for this example, we're going to go ahead and just create a residential alteration sample group. So what we do is we provide you with all of those sites that qualify for a residential alterations sample group. So you can go through the list and either select the particular site that you want. So you can just go around and say, well, these are the sites that I want, or you can go through and you can find the particular site that you wanted. So here's my tested site, and I'm not sure what other sites are compatible with that sample group, if it meets all of the criteria to be in the same sample group. So you can click on our compatible button, and what this will do is this one will go through the list, find all of those sites that share the same criteria and can be grouped with the particular house that you selected. All of the non-compatible sites will be listed down below. They'll be highlighted in red, and they will also give you a list of reasons why that particular site is not compatible. So let's look at this one here, the second site here. So we look at, it has different form names. So the MEC20, the duct leakage installer. So our for this particular site is AA HVAC company, but our compatible site, the one that we click the compatible button, it's listed as BB HVAC company. So it has a different installing contractor for that particular form. So we can see that several of these forms have different installing contractors. And then we can also see here that it has a different code year. So one of them is 2013, the other one is 2016. They can't go in the same sample groups. So we can see that there's lots of different reasons as we go down, whether it's different code years. For this one here, it's missing a measure. So one of the forms or one of the sites has a MEC 25, the other site doesn't have a MEC 25. So it'll let you narrow down why we determine that this site is not compatible with the site that you selected. So your next step then is going to go and select additional sites that you want to include in this sample group. Once you've selected those sites, go ahead and click on Add to Group, and it will add them into a specific group. So if we look at this here, we now create a sample group number that goes along with it, and this will be what we use to define this particular group. If this group is allowed to have additional sites added to it, for this one in particular, you can have a maximum of up to 7, and it is still allows addition of groups. Sometimes, depending on what you've done in the group, you may no longer be allowed to add sites. This button will no longer be active at that point. So if you need to add them, click on Add. It's going to take you back to that same one. Again, it's going to show you those sites that are compatible and the sites that are not compatible. So just select whichever ones you want to add to that group, click on Add to Group, and it will add them into this group. If we move over here to the right, we can see that we list the date for the completion of the installation certificates, so the oldest one, and let you know how many days ago it was. So this is useful for those open sample groups where they can be no more than 180 days apart. And so that will let you know that that may be why a particular site cannot be added into a group. So that information is provided for you there. Moving down, here's our list of sites. So this button here will take you to that particular site details. So it'll take you to the site details for this site. And I'll show you that a little bit later in the video. If we move to the right hand side over here, this button will allow you to remove that site if it is allowed. For example, if I click on it now, it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to remove it? You say yes, I want to remove it, and it's going to remove it. If the site is not allowed to be removed, when you click on it, it will just let you know that that site is no longer allowed to be removed, and that's because of maybe you've started entering some test data, or you've signed forms. Whatever that particular trigger is that prevents that site from being removed will be notified. So let's move down to the next section down here. And here we identify the type of sample group that it is. So here's our code year. So this was a 2013 site, so that other site that was not compatible must have been a 2016. And this is an addition and alteration. It can also be residential new construction, non-residential, solar. It's going to let you know what type of group this is right here. And then down below we have where you will do your data entry for those sites that belong to this group. So we break it down by the 3 sites that we have in here, and we let you know what systems. If there's multiple HVAC systems, then you'll see it broken down into those different system types. This one is just a single system per site, so there's just one listed here. And then over here we have our buttons that will allow you to open the form and enter your data and sign and move forward with those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a couple of different functions if we have failures, and then what we do with our form dependencies. And so we'll do that here as we move on. Okay, so what I've done is I have completed this MEC 20 and I put it into a failing state. So the rules say that if a CF3R fails, you're supposed to document it in the registry, and then you need to retest that site. So what we've done is we've provided a rev of 2. So this one is your second version that you can fill out. And once you do that, then it will see it as complete. But what else we've done is we left these available for you to select, because again, if you fail for one site, you have to randomly select a second site and complete a test on that one. If it fails, then you have to test any remaining sites in the sample group. If it passes, then all you have to do is retest the original failure until it passes. Once it passes, then that particular measure will be complete and any samples that need to be generated will be generated. So let me go ahead and get this into its next state, and then we'll take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so I went into this one and I entered passing data. So this one was passing, so we can see it changed to green, and our section here changed to green, so lets us know it's good, it's passing. And you'll notice that this one is now grayed out. We can no longer select this one because at this point in time it's not needed. If this were to have failed, then this one would remain blue and you'd need to complete that one as well. The sample for this one is not being generated, and it won't generate until we complete our testing on the first site for this particular measure. So I'm going to go ahead and get that into a complete state so we can see what it looks like with those samples generated. Okay, so I went ahead and entered passing data for this, signed it, and so now this one is done, this one's done, and here's our sampled that was generated for this particular one. So we didn't need to test this one, and we know that it's been sampled. So the next thing I want to talk about is what we call dependent forms. So there's a couple of forms that you need to complete that are dependent on the completion of a different form. So we have two examples here, both the MEC 22 for fan watt draw and the MEC 25. Both of these forms are dependent on the MEC 23 for airflow. That data is pulled into the other form, and it needs to be completed in order for that form to pass. So you can see that we have the MEC 23 listed twice. You do not need to complete this 2 times. Completing it once will copy that over, but we need to provide this in the scenario where one of these fails but the other one passes. So I'm going to go ahead and set up that scenario so we can see what that looks like, and I'll walk you through that so you can see what that workflow looks like, so that you can get to a completion and understand that when you come across that particular scenario. Okay, so the first step is I completed the MEC 23. I've opened this one, filled it out, signed it as passing, and then this one automatically changes to green. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is that these other sites are no longer available for you to select. And the reason for that is, once you've identified that this is your tested site for the MEC 23, you must also complete the forms that are dependent on it for that particular site. You can't complete the MEC 23 on this site and then come down here and complete the MEC 22 and the MEC 25 because it requires that MEC 23. So the next step is going to be to complete these forms here. I'm going to complete one of them and I'm going to fail the other one, and we'll see what happens next in this particular scenario. Okay, so what I did is I went in and I failed the MEC 22. So it generated another rev for that particular form because we need to retest it and enter our test data. And then I passed the MEC 25. So if we look at our other two sites that are here, you can see that MEC 23 is still grayed out. There's nothing I can do. And we can see that our MEC 25 has been listed as sampled. So the MEC 25 met all the criteria needed in order to generate those samples for it. The reason why the MEC 23 has not generated samples is because you need to complete a second MEC 23 and a second MEC 22 because of this failure. You have to do this MEC 23 because this one is dependent on it. You have to have that airflow value in order to calculate the fan watt draw. So you're going to select whichever of these two sites that you are going to test as your second sample because we had that failure. And then once you do that, then we'll see what happens to these other sites. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to complete these, and we'll take a look at what that looks like here next. Okay, so I completed my MEC 23 for this site. So you can see this one is now complete on both of those, and now this one is grayed out. You can't do anything here because now you need to complete the dependent form there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll see what the final outcome looks like. Okay, so I've got my second site. I've got my test done for the 23 and the 22. They're both done. They're green. You can see that these are still grayed out. And again, these are not going to generate until I fill out my second rev for the Spec 22, it has to be passing in order to generate those additional samples. So I'm going to go ahead, fill that out, and we'll end up with our final sample group in a complete and passing state. Okay, so here we are. I've completed all the tests that I needed. You can see everything is now changed to a green background, letting you know everything's done, it's complete. All of my samples have generated. Everything's good to go. I don't need to do anything else with this sample group. So now that it's reached a complete state, we've added an additional button here. I didn't cover this yet because I wanted to cover it now. The summary report has been there from the beginning, but now that it's complete, we bring up this print button. So you can print the documents that belong to this sample group all in a single document. And then if you need a sample group summary report, you can click the button here and it will generate the PDF of that summary report. Now, your other option, if you don't want to print all of the documents at the same time, but you need to get into the various documents to print them, we do provide that quick link here. So clicking on any of these will take you directly to the site details for that site. So for example, our site down here where it's all those sample documents, and I want to go and print out those samples, I can simply just click on the button here. It's going to take me right into site details for that site, and now I've got all of my sample documents and I've got my PDFs here. I can generate those, or I can use my print docs to print all of the documents for this one site, whatever I need to do. And then if I need to get back into that sample group, it's going to be right at the top of my list because it's going to list the most recently accessed site. So I can get right back in, jump to the next site if I want to here, or whatever I want to do within this sample group. So that brings us to the end of our sample group workflow demonstration. As always, should you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us. Give us a phone call, shoot us an email. We'll be more than happy to provide any assistance that we can. Any of those other items, if there was something else that you wanted to learn about and it wasn't covered in here, take a look for our other videos. We have a lot of other videos that cover all the other workflows and steps that you can, functionality within the registry. If you can't find that, let us know. We'd be more than happy to help you. So that brings us to the end of our sample group summary. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.